Hi, today we're going to be looking at Chapter 5 of your textbook, which is Researching for Argument and Advocacy, which is essentially what you'll be doing with this upcoming research paper. One quote that I thought was important to highlight in this chapter is that advocacy requires research. So you will be doing quite a bit of research throughout this project, and the research is really going to help enhance your argument. So, thinking about research, let's look at it in a new way. So, when you begin to look at what others have said and done, it takes you on a somewhat messy journey, which requires you to consider different perspectives, issues, or problems, and then develop your own interpretation and understanding. So, instead of thinking of the research process as boring and something that you don't want to engage in, think of it as a journey that's going to help you form some different perspectives on things. The purpose of your work should be what is guiding you. So, the purpose for this assignment is to find background, to explain the causes of the problem, and present solutions. So, that is what is going to be guiding you through the research project or process, excuse me. You may use sources from the library, of course, but you might also consider using informal interviews, conducting surveys, using visual images like infographics to help you get some information, or anything else. Because you're required to use 10 sources, you're going to need to think creatively on how you can use different sources to help you get information that you need. Researching is a very ethical process. You want to make sure that you are presenting information in an ethical way. So, ethics connects to ethos, if you remember that from a few weeks ago, a strategy for presenting an argument. So, you will be using ethos in this research process. You will also be using probably pathos and logos, and we'll get to that a little bit later. You need to be open to what the research shows you. So many of us go into the research process with our own ideas and beliefs. We need to be open, and in that those may change throughout the research process. Again, that kind of leads to the third point. Treat beliefs and positions as hypotheses, not unassailable truths. So, what you're coming in with could be changed, it could be altered based on what the research says. And then, lastly, you want to represent the position of others truthfully. So, if the research does show something different than what you believe, you want to present the research and the position of that research truthfully and not show any bias towards your original thoughts and opinions. The research process is, of course, rhetorical. And the way that this is going to go is you're going to find a topic, which most of you already have. We're using the same topic from our first assignment. Narrow your topic through initial research. Once you start doing some research, you might find that your topic needs to be altered slightly, and that is fine. Remember, the writing process as a whole is not something you go through step by step, but something that you kind of flow in and out of. So if you need to adjust your topic after you do some initial research, that is completely fine. The next thing you want to do is develop questions to guide your research. So, what specifically are you trying to find in your research? Use your questions to help you find sources. Once you've developed these questions, use those as you do different searches to find resources. Next, we want to evaluate our sources. You did this somewhat with the annotated bibliography assignment for the open letter. So some of your sources have already been evaluated. Think about if you're going to use those same sources for this assignment, or do you need to just start over and find completely new sources? That is totally up to you. Engage with your sources. So again, while we reference the annotated bibliography, you've already engaged with some of your sources. And even though you're not being asked to create an annotated bibliography for this assignment, think about that process. What is a summary? How are you going? What is a summary of the article? How are you going to use the source in your research? And is the source credible? If not, you probably need to find another one. The next thing is to decide on your argument. How are you going to present the information that you've gained from your sources? And then the last thing is to actually produce your text, which again will be 6 full pages, not including your works cited page. Here are some tips on where you can find sources. So you can always head to the library in person. One tool that a lot of people fail to utilize is actually the reference librarian. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Reference librarians are a wealth of knowledge. They can lead you and guide you in the right direction and help you find some really good sources. Our librarians on campus can do this. They can also do this online. If you visit the library website, they can help you that way, and I believe over the phone. So take advantage of that if you're struggling with finding sources. Online databases is another great way to find sources. You can always use a search engine like Google. Make sure that if you're using a search engine that you are really carefully evaluating those sources to make sure that they are credible. You can use visual or audio sources. I've had students in the past use a YouTube video or a TED Talk or a podcast as a possible source for their research. That is totally acceptable. You can also search communities or neighborhoods. Look in your local newspapers or search local archives. Connect with different social or civic groups that are committed to or looking at the same problem that you're focusing on. What information can you get from them? And then it is time for you to really engage with your sources. Notice at the top of the arrows, it says read, 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 and then check. This is essentially what you're going to be doing. You are going to read for answers to questions. You're going to read rhetorically. So when you're thinking about your sources, think of the purpose, think of the audience that it was written for, think of the context. Use that to figure out if this is a source you actually want to use. Are the purposes the same? Are they writing for the same audience? If not, you might need to find a different source. Read for opinions that differ from yours and from each other. You want to make sure that the research that you're finding is not biased or not contradictory. You want to read actively. So that might be annotating your text, taking notes within the margins, writing down the things that are most important. You are using 10 sources for this essay, so it's going to be important for you to find a system for recording notes that works best for you. And then lastly, check your sources for other possible sources. Many times if you're reading a scholarly peer-reviewed article, they include a works cited. Check that out. See if there are other sources that you could possibly use for your writing. One of the most important things that comes with writing a research paper is plagiarism, and you definitely want to make sure that you are avoiding plagiarism. Here are some words and ideas that don't need to be cited. So anything that is common knowledge. For example, if you write something and you say the sky is blue, that is something that is widely known. That's common knowledge. You also don't need to cite facts that are available in a wide range of sources. So let's say you're writing an essay on Michael Jordan and it states his birth date. That's probably going to be the same in every source that you look at, so you don't need to necessarily cite that. And then you don't need to cite results of your own field work. That is your own work, so it doesn't need to be cited within your paper. However, there are some words and ideas that always need to be cited, specifically someone else's exact words. If you are quoting someone, it needs to be cited. If you're paraphrasing or summarizing someone else's words or ideas, that needs to be cited in text and on your works cited page. If you are using facts not known or accepted by everyone, those need to be cited. And if you are using any type of photograph, chart, graph, or illustration, those also need to be cited in order to avoid plagiarism. And remember, for this assignment, you are using in-text citations, and you will be required to have a works cited page at the end. The works cited page will be done in MLA format. We're using MLA 8. There are some resources already in some of the previous week's folders for that. But you can also review pages 153 to 155 in your textbook. You can use a citation generator. I suggest using these with caution and double checking the citations because sometimes they are incorrect. I always refer students to the Purdue OWL, which stands for Online Writing Lab. If you just Google that, it'll come up. They have an excellent resource for citing sources and explaining how to do both in-text citations and a works cited page. And lastly, use your friend Google. When you ask a teacher, like, how do you cite a tweet? They're most likely going to Google it to find the answer. I mean, citations is not something that most instructors have committed to memory. So you can Google it just as easy as we can Google it to find the answer. As you start writing your essay, keep in mind your thesis statement. Remember that your thesis statement is composed of two different sentences joined by the word because. First, you have the claim, which is a statement about a condition, policy, or event that the writer believes should or should not come to pass. And then you have the evidence, which is stating why the claim should or should not come to pass. A thesis statement essentially offers a summary of the detailed evidence that would be offered in a developed argument. Your thesis statement is going to set the stage for the remainder of your paper. It is going to foreshadow what you're going to be talking about. An example: poverty is one of the biggest problems facing the country. That's the claim. Because it creates unfair disadvantages in the educational system, impacts healthcare, and leads to food insecurity. That is the evidence. So throughout my paper, you know for sure I'm going to be talking about the educational system, healthcare, and food insecurity when it comes to poverty. Good luck this week as you start writing your essay, and then email me with any questions that you might have.